and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett from Black Crow Gaming, and today we are going to be talking about the top 3 ranged anti-tank platforms available to Dark Angels. So I just wanted to start this off by kind of breaking down what my criteria is, because a lot of the time when I've seen people comparing anti-tank pieces, they just go on this idea of pure damage, but actually there's not that context of like, I think the best example of this is the Gladiator Lancer, and this is partly why I'm doing this video, because it's a bit of a running joke in the Discord that I, whenever someone brings up the Gladiator Lancer, I inform them that my penis is a better gun and produces more shots than a Gladiator Lancer. And so now I'm putting my money where my mouth is, not where my Lancer is, and I'm going to try and break down why that is the case, but also what makes these other platforms better. So I want to break down sort of the key areas here. So the first one is that cost versus efficiency. We are the only sort of equating factor in army list production is that we are all playing 2,000 points. How efficient and how much can it punch up in terms of its points value is a real question in terms of that efficiency. But it's not just punching up in terms of its damage output, it's punching up in like loads of different spaces. So it might be that it gains you efficiency by ensuring that it's surviving lots of anti-tank shots coming back at it. It might be that it's being able to deal with holding objectives quite efficiently, and it might be that it's switching roles and taking out elite infantry, etc, etc. So key areas that I want to look at are ability to switch roles, which is that kind of, okay, well, we've shot this tank, they have no tanks left, let's deal with this light infantry, or let's deal with this elite infantry. Obviously certain tanks are going to be better into others, but that ability to just switch between your targeting, it just makes it a bit more efficient, a bit better into certain matchups. And in tournaments, you want that flexibility because you can't predict what your 5 games will be. You know, it might be that we go into a really heavy tank meta, but then actually you go into 200 guard in recon. Like, these things happen. So the ability for your anti-tank to switch roles and still be efficient is very, very useful. Then we go to reliability. Now, this can be by having innate rerolls. So obviously the Ballistus is a great example of this. That oath redundancy is very important. And then it could be hitting on 2s. It could be a bunch of different things that just make it a lot more reliable at its job of killing those tanks. Its primary job as that anti-tank piece. Next, we've got survivability. Now, survivability is because we know that it is exposing itself to duel with other anti-tank pieces. And the likelihood is that your opponent's not just going to have the one that you killed straight off the bat, even if you do kill it, or if you low roll, how do you take that hit back? So just that survivability to actually be able to get those gun lines and then keep those gun lines. Following on from that is the speed. You know, can it get to the positions that it needs to be? Can it redeploy if necessary? Are you able to ensure that that gun is firing every turn if possible, or at least 4 turns? If you've gone first sen, you're not able to shoot it because your opponent's all hidden turn 1. And then there's some other small factors that I'm factoring in. So for example, the footprint of the tank, you know, is it easy to hide? Is it a really like weird shape, which makes it a massive pain in the arse? Is that dozer blade particularly annoying when you bring it in? Those kinds of little things that impact the way that those tanks perform and how they can kind of really deal with opposition. But mostly it's going to be those other factors that I've gone over. So let's jump in to number 3 primarily, and we're going to be starting with the Ballistus Dreadnought. So Ballistus Dreadnought has been one of the go-to anti-tank pieces since the start of the year, where they were somehow reduced to 130 points. But remember, there was a long time where they were at 140 and people weren't playing them. So there is a thing where like sometimes you will find a diamond in the rough, but people have just missed it. But the Ballistus Dreadnought has then steadily been increasing in value. It's obviously had its real heyday when it was 130 points, and it was absolutely demolishing in the Ultramarines cause, or it was, and then when it went to 140, it was still regularly being played, but that's because Predators were also at 140. Now, in terms of that anti-tank, that's where I think the Ballistus really comes into its own, because A, it's got that oath redundancy, the ability to reroll all of its hits into most targets. Let's be honest, there's very few times that it's not going to have its rerolls, particularly in that early game. It frees up your oath. And I think that's so important, particularly as a Dark Angel, where you want that oath elsewhere. Like, usually we're now playing the Lions, so we've got reroll ones to hit and wound in combat, which is great with Deathwing Knights and the Lion himself, which is basically one oath. Then if we got the Ballistus or a couple of Ballistus Dreadnoughts, then they're able to take pot shots at a target that they can get their rerolls against, and then that frees up the oath for, say, your land speed of vengeances to go after some elite infantry, etc., etc. So that oath redundancy is really key, and having that access to rerolls is very, very useful, especially with the fact that it's not limited to like number of rerolls, so like not just one reroll. I wonder who we're talking about. Which does really help, because it just allowed, like, if you shit the bed and roll a really bad roll, like, you can just pick them all up and go again, and that's absolutely fine. Next, 2-up save and T10. It's really quite durable. Like, it's a pain in the ass to get rid of these things. Like, even if your opponent's at like a -4, if you're in cover, it's a 5, and if you AOC, it's a 4. That's really impactful against that kind of other anti-tank coming in. And the Ballistus Dreadnought can just really cause issues for your opponent's maths in terms of it can just spike those saves. It's almost like it's got that like 4-up invuln, but not, just because its armor is so tough, and the fact that it's quite happy to sit in cover. It's got those pokey bits so that you can kind of keep it in cover quite efficiently by just like popping the las cannons behind a wall, etc., etc., just to make sure that your Ballistus is gaining the benefit of cover, and it's just going to make that so much more efficient, because you've got more opportunity to fire that gun. At 150 points, it's a little bit more expensive now, and like we are getting up to that point where it's like, okay, well, this is the same as a Gladiator Valiant. I think it's better than a Gladiator Valiant, to be quite honest, but 150 points is more on the expensive end. I think it's still very good. Another sort of big benefit for it is it can really efficiently kill light infantry and heavy infantry if it needs to switch off those tank targets. So it can fire the 4 and the 4 bigger shots if it's going into elite infantry, and usually kill 2 or 3. Pretty damn useful. Or it can go into the light infantry using its frag missiles and its storm bolter, and sometimes just kicking them to death as well, just to try and get rid of more of that stuff. And then finally, the 4OC has come in really clutch for me so many times, because I'll go onto my expansion and I'll have my gun lanes and I'll have my Ballistus sort of like kind of chilling in cover, but still having those gun lanes, but sitting on the objective of the 4OC, which makes it just a bit of a pain in the arse to deal with. Just taking pot shots across the board because it's got that range. It's not as quick, so you do kind of want to find those key positions that it can walk to quite easily with its 8-inch movement. But once it's there, it can quite happily just stand there and just pour pain down on your opponent while holding that objective quite efficiently. And if your opponent runs another vehicle on, like, it's not taking it off you. So, because most of the vehicles are like OC3. So that OC4 is quite a critical break point. It helps if I remember how to speak English. So yeah, the Ballistus Dreadnought comes in at 3rd place. I still think there's definitely place in it, even though it has gone up 20 points since it was at its very, very best. But overall, I think the Ballistus is still a really solid pick, and one that's definitely worth reviewing, and still worth keeping, because I think it just fits our durability side of things as well. So next, in number 2, we've got the Vindicator. And this is probably, again, a shock to no one, that the Vindicator is coming in second. It might be more of a shock that it's not coming in first, that I did sort of throw that into like my brain of like, well, maybe this should be top just because of sheer damage output, and then it's got that survivability, etc., etc., etc. And like, yes, there are so many arguments for this, but my big gripe with it is actually it's only got 9-inch movement. It's only got 24-inch range, and then it's incredibly swingy. It's affectionately known as the casino cannon for a reason, because you need to roll somewhat lucky on your dice. I've once got 5 wounds through on a big knight with -1 damage, and I did 5 damage to it. It was really, really bad rolling, but like that's what happened. That game was just decided there and then because of one bad roll with this Vindicator. If it had been, say, flat 3 damage, instead he takes 2, he takes 10 damage instead, but he took half of that because it's so swingy. However, I do think this still has the best potential to be one of the deadliest tanks that we have. That Demolisher Cannon, although it is short range, is so brutal. That D6 plus 3 with blast, very, very nice. But more importantly for me, it's that survivability of it. That T11, really critical breakpoint. We've seen how the T12 to T11 is not like a huge thing so much with knights. Obviously, like las cannons and things like that are somewhat relevant, but I mean, it then begs the question, how often are we seeing las cannons outside of potentially like Dev Centurions, but they've already got +1 to wound as well. So like, I think there's that T11 is quite a critical breakpoint. And then it's also got that 2-up save. And the way that the model is done as well, it's reasonably compact, but it's easy to have some of it in cover because of that nice dozer blade, just to make sure that you are getting the benefit of cover and you're really maxing out that 2-up save, hull down, causing problems. I like the ability that it can shoot in combat and really cause issues still. I think my favourite interaction I've seen with that was Anvil Siege Force, obviously a little bit of a niche one. But when it was charged, I think actually it was just tagged in combat. I just tagged it in combat. And then suddenly it stands still and it gets to shoot me, and it uses the strat to give it like sustain 2 or wherever it was. And it goes and hits on 2s because it's heavy. So I just think that was a really nice example of it. But the ability to shoot into combat, I think, is just very, very efficient and very useful overall. I really like the Vindicator. I've been using a couple recently in a Company of Hunters list because that sort of helps out with that speed problem. And we do have access to things that help with that speed problem, be that Gladius, be that Company of Hunters, be that the single strat in Stormlance. Like, there's lots of different things that we can do which nullify that speed as a major problem. And also, like, your opponent has to respect that you could spike with that Vindicator. And if that Vindicator really does spike, there's nothing in the game that can stand up to it. And that AP3 it does really, really matter when we're seeing more like Repexes as a good example. Well, I guess I mean, it doesn't hugely matter on knights because you're just putting them on their 5-up invulnerable save, but like into other power armor, definitely relevant. But I think, and something that I've actually not popped on here, but its ability to switch between targets of elite infantry, light infantry even, and those tanks, I think is really important because it's got that blast weapon, it's getting those extra shots. It can just scatter shot a 10-man. Like, it can just delete like 2/3 of that and then take out another 1 or 2 with its Stormbolter. Or it can quite happily kill a 5-man of Marines. Like, this is a really efficient tank into most targets, but there does just come that bit of variance, and you can guarantee over the course of those 5 games, there'll be one game where it's absolute poo. So it's just worth bearing in mind that there certainly is that variance in there, and that's why the Vindicator dropped down to number 2 rather than going in at number 1. And also the fact that it doesn't play that well with others. It's very, very good, but it doesn't really bring anything to your army. It doesn't like give you the oaths redundancy that a Ballistus does, or it doesn't give you like a bonus into other things. There's not really anything that the Vindicator does, and it is also all on that Demolisher Cannon. Really, like, there's a Hunter Killer, yes, but the only really meaningful gun is just that Vindicator, the Demolisher Cannon, while as, say, the Ballistus has got 2 las cannons, 2 las cannon shots, and 2 missile shots. Like, there's just a little bit of difference in there. You are fully reliant on just that gun. I think it is a very versatile gun, like, don't get me wrong, but between that and the short range, that's why the Vindicator was just tipped down just a little bit, but it is still probably one of the best platforms we have in the game. I really love using it. It's been very, very efficient for me recently. So let's do some honourable mentions. So I went for 5 honourable mentions here, and you will see again no Gladiator Lancer, and that is because I do think they are very, very poor, and it's because ultimately everything on this list does something better than them. So if we go back to their durability, they're a 3-up save, and they're long, and they're a bit crap, like that. They are T10, but so is like most of this list, with the exception of the speeders, and I guess the Centurions. But yeah, it's not. That's pretty. Their survivability is pretty poor because of the size and that. The 2 shots is very, very poor, especially into the 4-up invulns. It's like, yes, sure, you get 2 through and they don't save them. Yeah, you're doing real nasty damage. If you get 1 through, pretty much every tank that I can think of that's relevant in the meta has more than 9 wounds. So even if you roll a 6 on damage, that 1 shot is not killing something. And at that point, what do you do? Then you're in real trouble because your tank is then going to die back to that anti-tank. And a lot of the time people are like, oh, but here's the reason of why. And I was like, no, there is just ultimately cheaper, better options. It's like, well, you want something that can go hull down and secure an area. Well, the Ballistus is really good at that and has the range. It doesn't have as much damage output, but it's better at switching between roles. It's better at surviving. Although it's better at holding objectives. You know, the Lancer has a real lack of an ability to be able to switch its roles. So it's definitely, that's more on the dishonorable mentions, in all honesty. And I know that a lot of people they're like, oh, but the Lancer looks so cool, that all that kind of stuff. It's like, yes, I get it, but it's just inefficient compared to the other options. It's too expensive, it's too few shots, and it's not survivable enough. So on the honourable mentions lists, however, we're going to start off with them often kind of overlooked, and that is the Predator Annihilator. At 135, it's still 135 points for a Predator chassis, which is pretty good. 10-inch move, T10, 3-up save, so not the best defensive stats, but it can quite happily sit back at that 48 inches, and you're only paying 135 points for it, which is pretty damn cheap and very, very affordable in my opinion. Its guns are not the best. It's got a couple of las cannons and then the twin link las cannon, which is nice. And the re-rolling damage, it does increase its efficiency. It's solid. It's okay, and it does its job for 135 points. It does demand Oath, which is sort of a bit of a cross against it. And I mean, it does become a question of like, it's 135 points. Do I care if I toss this away after it just kills a tank? The answer is probably no. So it can just unleash all of its las cannon shots, unleash its Hunter Killer into the Oath target, kill that tank problem, and then it's fine that it dies. It can't really switch to infantry overly well. I guess you could take it with the heavy bolters, but like, why would you? So it's only popping out those 3 shots, which I just think is just not quite good enough for the Predator Annihilator to really, really pop off. And if it's got elite infantry coming at it, it's usually in trouble. But at 135 points, that's often not a disaster. Predator Destructor. So this one is less of an anti-tank piece, but it's definitely worth mentioning just because it has a very efficient flat 3 damage gun. Obviously, the AP1 is a little bit of a letdown, but its ability to just have the 2 las cannons and the Hunter Killer, and then the sort of quite reliable auto cannon. It can switch targets very efficiently. It's actually probably it is better into elite infantry than it is into tanks, but that's also fine. Sometimes you just punch up. Sometimes you're going into demons and you just roll a bunch of 5s, and suddenly they're still saving it on 4s. So like there's a lot of good reasons for the Predator Destructor. Again, it's not the most survivable, but it does have that range advantage. Obviously, you do want it in rapid fire range, which does close down how it can do, but it's happy to sort of early game skirmish at the distance until some of those other targets may have been eliminated, so that then it can push up. Next, we've got the new boy on the block, although I guess it's really, really not the new boy, but it is the new boy for the meta, and that is the Land Speeder Vengeance. Land Speeder Vengeance, the only reason that it's on here is because of the speed, the efficiency, the switching between targets, and then that twin linked. So on its own, not the best into anti-tank, but it's 120 points. It can punch up quite happily, and there's ways to buff it, which we're going to come on to soon. Then we've got a Storm Speeder, Hammer Strike. Again, similar reasons, but 125. Am I that bothered? It's not as good at switching targets as the Vengeance is, but the Vengeance has also got an Invuln, which is really, really tasty. I think it's the only unit on this list that has an Invuln, which is certainly relevant. Obviously, it's a 5-up Invuln, which is not ideal, but like it's still solid. It's not like DDA level, but it's still good. And again, for 120, it's just very, very useful. And that twin linked has saved my backside so many times, and the ability to just switch between potential targets, very, very efficient alongside that 14-inch move. I've just waxed lyrical more about the Vengeance, but like that's also kind of true for the Hammer Strike. It's just kind of a worse Vengeance. And then finally, we've got Centurion Devastators. Like they're good. Innate rerolls, so again, that redundancy for Oath. It's 12 wounds for 165 points of T7, 2-up save. That's not bad at all. I like the fact that they've got the twin link las cannons. The little boob missiles as well are really quite useful, particularly if you are switching between targets, and now we're seeing more 20-man bricks. Suddenly those boob missiles are just very, very efficient into those 20-man bricks. So Centurion Devastators, definitely relevant. I still think 3 dropping out of a Storm Raven is probably the best way that we play them in Dark Angels. I mean, I've seen people arguing for them in company of Hunters. I would be cautious, just depending on terrain. If you can deploy them in a position where suddenly they can get those lanes on like a 5 very efficiently, because you just don't want to rely on high rolling on those advances to be able to get them into that position, then yeah, okay, I get it. But they are very, very slow at a 4-inch move. Even if they do have that advance. I mean, sometimes they'll go 10 inches and then they'll ruin your opponent's day. But yeah, that 4 inches is a little bit sketchy boots in my opinion. So finally, the last and, in my opinion, best piece that we can take is actually the Storm Speeder Thunderstrike. Now, the Storm Speeder Thunderstrike, every time I play with it, it just feels incredible for 150 points. And the reason that it feels incredible is because it synergizes so well with the army. We are encouraged as Dark Angels, especially now, to take Plasma because it's so efficient into elite infantry, and it just absolutely wipes those mirror. That power armor mirror, dead instantly. We are so good into that power armor mirror. And the Plasma only makes it more brutal for our opponent. Do we want to spam -1 damage? Hell yeah, let's put some more Redemptors in to go along with our Deathwing Knights. And the Thunderstrike is just that really key unlocking piece that just makes it so much more efficient to be able to take down those key problems, those key anti-tank things, but it's quite happy to just do its job in terms of getting around the board because it's got a 14-inch move and it's Raven Wing, so in Company of Hunters it can redeploy. By redeploy I mean uppy downy. And then it's just damn fast. It's got some really solid guns, so 2 shots on the las fusil, strength 9, AP 3, damage D6. The missile, which is strength 12, AP 3, and I think it's D6 plus 1 on the missile. And then the twin-linked Icarus pod as well. The really nice thing is they also hit on 2s, so it's a bit more Oath redundancy for you as well. And also, if you do Oath into it, like, and you do roll like an absolute glut of 1s, it's unlikely you roll a glut of 1s again. But I really think it's that enabling ability. Yes, it does sacrifice some survivability. It's only T9, 3-up save with 11 wounds. But it can hang back quite happily as well. The key guns are 48 and 36 respectively for the missiles and the las fusil. And it's quite happy just to like switch on to different targets. Like if there's some elite infantry or like a 5-man marine squad coming at it, it can put a real dent in them, or it can actually just pick them up. But I love this one just because of, again, that sheer speed and ability to get it into those positions to then support the key part of your army. And then suddenly so much more is anti-tank. Where your opponent was like maybe thinking, okay, well, there's only a couple of land speed of vengeances there, so I can start moving my tank down there. Suddenly Thunderstrike screams in from the other side of the battlefield, puts that pressure down on your opponent. Wounding on 4s, twin-linked, AP3, they are probably falling on their arse reasonably swiftly. And the damage output from the Thunderstrike itself is not too bad at all. Sometimes you can target it at multiple different tanks because you are expecting that its las fusil and missiles will do enough damage that the first tank that you target is so chipped and so wounded that you don't actually need the +1 to wound into that. So Thunderstrike, I have been super impressed with, and that redundancy for like the Demolisher Cannon and just going, okay, that Repulsor Executioner is getting wounded on 2s. Now I'm hitting on 3s, or maybe with some incursors, I'm hitting on 2s, and I'm wounding it on 2s. That is a dead Repulsor Executioner. It's just, again, it's that it comes back to the synergy and being more, the core is sort of, it's more than its parts. And that's why I really like the Thunderstrike. It came down to really of like, is it the Thunderstrike or is it the Vindicator? It's how well it plays with others. And ultimately the Thunderstrike came out on top because it can play the long range game. It can play that sort of just skulking around, taking pot shots, improving while the Redemptors do the heavy lifting. There's so many different things that it's just so good at doing. And now that the land speed of Vengeance is even more efficient and so useful, being able to take a Thunderstrike that can A, keep up the land speed of Vengeance, and B, massively power them up into those tanks, it just feels very, very good. So we've seen John Lennon. If you've seen the Art of War list recently for Dark Angels, John Lennon's Stormlance list had 2 Storm Speed of Thunderstrikes in and 3 Land Speed of Vengeances. I would personally be tempted by playing that in company of Hunters. But overall, we're just seeing it for 150 points. It is just exceptional. I've been so impressed with it so far, and it demands your opponent to shoot it rather than the guns that are doing like real damage, because they're just more worried about it going around, like redeploying, finding another angle, causing problems, and just really ruining your opponent's day. I think this is particularly relevant for both GW and UKTC because just you can get those key angles very, very quickly. I've been super impressed with the Thunderstrike. It really is something special, and it's one that should not be slept on. Finally, thank you so much to all of our sponsors, Glasshammer Gaming, Terrain Forge, and Gambit Gaming, alongside the lovely guys at Trident Futureworks, who provide our boxes. So Glasshammer, obviously you can get some lovely cheap Warhammer, and you use the code BlackCrow for 5% off. Terrain Forge, you can use the code BCG5 and you can pick up some lovely terrain. And we are just working out what our coupon code for Gambit Gaming is going to be, but you can get a lovely fancy shirt as well from Gambit Gaming. They're absolutely gorgeous, and you can now also get one of our Club Black Crow shirts too. So if you are a fan and you want to merch up, that is an option for you. If you want to come and join the Discord and see me make dick jokes about Lancers, then there is probably a link somewhere below. So come join and listen to me joking to get really pissy about Lancers. Lancers do have to be censored in that Discord server. It's very, it's very upsetting if I see the word Lancer. I really hope you've enjoyed this. Leave your opinions, unless they are pro-Lancer, in the comments. If you think I'm dramatically wrong about Lancers, you can try and tell me. I will vehemently disagree with you. But I am very, very excited about Thunderstrikes with land speed of Vengeances. And that is my very, very happy place at the moment. So again, thank you so much for watching, and remember, stay loyal, fuckers. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.